Well, good morning. I say good morning because it's morning for me, but could be afternoon, could be evening for you. This is Rarest Photos. Um, gonna read some Elvis and Kathy, as you can see right there. You probably already watched Child Bride today. If you're reading that series, you may have caught up with some other videos. Maybe one of the comment videos. I try to do a comment video every day to showcase some of your comments because y'all have a lot of great ideas, a lot of great thoughts, and a lot of love and passion for Elvis, and I greatly appreciate that. You probably noticed lately I've been doing little screen shares of some of those folks that have done the thanks, the little monetary donation. So I appreciate that. Even if you can't do it, listen, I appreciate you as well. Um, and you probably see some of these records in the background. One of my favorite records is The Real Elvis. You know, it's got Don't Be Cruel, Hound Dog, My Baby Left Me, I Want You, I Need You, I Love You. Um, and I didn't pay 125 each for these. Trust me, I did not. I don't have that sort of income in my life. This was part of a much larger collection um, that I got. But what I really thought was cool, you got Music City Record Racks, price $1.29, sales tax was 5 cents. What was the tax on that? 10% would be 12 cents. So about 5 cents was the sales tax back then, $1.34. Just pretty cool. Anyhow, so where are we at in Elvis and Kathy? Sorry, I have to take my jacket off. Just took my son to school, so getting a little cooler out there. Where were we in Elvis and Kathy? Let's go ahead. I got a bookmark. This is not a bookmark. It's a card holder. So Elvis had been talking about how Priscilla wanted a career. One career in the family was enough. We talked about Linda Thompson. Well, Ginger did. Sorry, not Ginger. Kathy talked about Linda Thompson. Talked about Ginger Alden. And kind of surprising to see what she thought about Elvis's feelings for Linda and Ginger. You may or may not agree with it. Of course, this is Elvis sharing his communication with Kathy, and towards the end of his life, and I don't know. Well, we're going to find out when the last time Kathy talked to Elvis. That's coming up at some point here because we're at page 190. But Kathy certainly believed, and we're going to just read that first, and then we'll move on. Like, subscribe. Hey, those of you that are watching the whole video all the way through, thank you. I appreciate it. You guys can continue to leave those comments that you made it all the way through. Helps rank the video up, helps the channel out, helps me out. So those that can do it, once again, thanks so much. I really appreciate you. And, I give you shout outs in videos sometimes, and sometimes I respond to your comments as well on my YouTube studio. So know that I'm trying to get to as many as possible. And hey, also know that if you disagree with me, listen, I'm never upset with you, okay? If you have a different opinion on Are You Lonesome Tonight, the Lucy DeBarban story, if you got a different opinion on what I think about Michael Edwards or Priscilla Presley or whatever, I don't think any of y'all have a different opinion on Michael Edwards, but just know I listen and I'll look at it. I mean, if it's something that makes sense, I'll explore it. All right, so Kathy wrote, the reason Linda lasted so long is because she let him do his thing, see other women while she was there at home and on the road. I know there are a lot of women who can look the other way and still love the man or their man, but to constantly have it going on right in front of you and not have it bother you, I thought was rather unusual. Of course, Elvis lavished elaborate gifts on Linda and her family. He gave her credit cards and a free-handed spending. Now, this is Kathy saying, hey, maybe she stayed so long because of the money. That's what I deduced from this reading. Vernon was beside himself about her spending habits, but it didn't faze Elvis. It was nothing for her to go out for an hour and spend $10,000 or $15,000 on a fur coat or something. Well, I need it for the tour, she would say. But she did dress well, she looked gorgeous, and Elvis liked that. After Linda, his next and last serious relationship was with Ginger Alden. Elvis was very happy and in love with Ginger, and did, in fact, at one point, that's very important, at one point, want to marry her. Now, once again, I'm not trying to get into an argument with Ginger. This is just another person looking like they weren't going to get married. At one point he did, but then he didn't. So I don't know. Once again, if you like Ginger Alden, hey, I don't want to hurt her feelings. you know, I, once again, I'm not sharing what I think about Ginger at this point in the whole relationship and everything. Sometime I will. I mean, I'm not trying to be secretive, and I'm not trying to um, make waves about it. I've got a feeling about it, and until I really look into it a little bit more, and I'm so busy in my life, I don't want to say something. I've got an opinion, but I'd like it to be backed up by more facts than we know, and I think we know plenty. Sorry, I regress. Let's just keep reading. In fact, he looked happier than I'd seen him in years. At that point, with Ginger, for the first time since I'd known him, he was monogamous. I believe a man is monogamous if he really, really loves a woman, and I, for one, was glad he'd found someone that made him happy. But I think it was too much for Ginger to deal with a dying Elvis. She was just too young. I don't think she realized how serious his condition was. She was in deep water over her head with a terminally ill man. And, you know, I got to say that's something that's part of what I believe. And it's obvious to most of y'all too, I think. It became obvious their age difference was a real barrier, but that wasn't all. She couldn't handle the routine of being on the road with him. She cares more about her family. Than she cares for me, he told me. I'd even pay to bring her whole family along, but she wanted to go home. Of course, it's understandable that the road would prove too much for her. I know that it's fatiguing, but it can also be boring unless you're a performer waiting to go on and do your next show. It's a case of two different worlds, and it's very hard for them to mix successfully. With all of this, there's no doubt that I was still in love with Elvis in 1971. But even in my very limited experience with men, I knew that it was a dead end, a relationship without a real foundation. There's no future in this, I remember crying to Elvis once. At first, he looked bewildered. Then he replied in a loud and stern voice, You don't know that. I don't think he had any idea of what I was talking about. Whenever a tour was over, I returned to Los Angeles because that is where my home is, and also because I can afford to work there. I can easily find work there, I'm sorry. One of the first dates I had after my return was with an old friend I'd been on the road with for 2 years prior to joining Elvis. I will call him Adam, although that's not his real name. During those 2 years with Adam, I was acutely aware of how physically attractive he was, but I was not ready at that time to give up my virginity for a romantic fling. When we renewed our friendship once again, he was getting over a terrible divorce and was actually in therapy trying to learn how to cope with his own heartbreak. Well, my hopeless situation with Elvis made the two of us, Adam and I, perfect for one another. Besides, I still found him physically attractive. Well, from that first date, one thing led to another, and we went to bed together. I couldn't have had a better experience than one with Adam. He often said he wished my first experience had been with him. Adam was an accomplished lover, and no girl or rebound or otherwise could find fault in him. He was creative, talented, and exciting. However, I have to confess that although I realized new sexual heights, there was something dead inside me, as if part of me was gone. There were no bells and whistles, no total abandon. As much as Adam tried, there were no moments where I gave myself entirely to the relationship. Adam and I continued to see one another for 12 years whenever I was in Los Angeles. However, having been on the road himself for years, he was too realistic to try to swear me to faithfulness. He wanted to feel completely free on the road. So he's an entertainer, another entertainer. Huh. Well, we'll never know, because Adam is Adam. It's not his name. That being said, actually, I think our relationship suited both of us just fine during the period when we needed someone so much. I had finally given up on the idea of a prince on a white horse. My feet were finally on the ground, and Adam helped me put them there. Back on tour, I was uncomfortable and ill at ease when I was with Elvis at first. I knew then that I did not want to continue our intimate relationship, that we both had to face the truth. Elvis and I had a long talk and both agreed that we could still work together and be friends, but that did not include anything more serious. You have your own life to live, and you have to be happy. And if you can't be happy in this kind of relationship, Kathy, I want you to do what you feel you have to do. Elvis said that to me, and I was pleased with his thoughtful and mature attitude. Well, the new arrangement seemed to work out well, and I began dating one of the singers in the show. I don't think we made a secret that we were seeing each other, but we didn't want to flaunt it either. One reason was that the singer was married. Oh my goodness, Kathy. Kathy, Kathy, Kathy. Kathy, Kathy, Kathy. Sweet Kathy goes from a virgin in a couple different intermarital relationships. My goodness. The things we're finding out, folks. Anyhow, now once again, she wasn't married. That's an important point to make here. I guess. All right, so one reason was that he was married and was going through a terrible period that eventually did end up in divorce. Elvis knew I was seeing him, but I didn't know he was aware of it until one night when he begged me to stay with him. Nothing will happen. I just need to talk. To be near you, he said over and over again. Is it Doug? He asked. I said it was, surprised he knew about my personal life, although I shouldn't have been. Anyways, Elvis stopped pleading with me to stay with him and never said a word after that. I will admit that this was something of a surprise because everyone else I dated over the years came in for some criticism or rather nasty treatment from Elvis. But he liked Doug, and I think he knew he was going through some very bad times and had great respect for him as a singer. Yet, Elvis could be possessive and jealous, even though we had agreed to be friends, but not date one another. I recall the time Lee Majors, the television and motion picture star, made a trip to Las Vegas to visit Elvis at the Hilton. Red West brought Lee backstage, and I was just getting ready to go on, and Lee jokingly remarked, "Ooh, I think I'm in love," just after we had been introduced. Of course, I was flattered. Lee Majors is a very attractive man. Evidently, word got back to Elvis about Lee's complimentary remark. Elvis called me backstage to talk in between shows. When we came out of his private dressing room, he asked Lee to join us, and then Elvis made it clear that I was his property. He made a point of telling me in front of Lee, "He's happily married to Farrah Fawcett. You two stay away from each other." Then he turned to Lee and said, "You stay away from her. She belongs to me." Lee said, "Yeah, sure, Elvis. Hey, Kathy, you want to go gambling with me over at Caesars?" I laughingly said, "Sure." Elvis stepped in right away to say, "No, no, no, no way." Now I think Elvis is joking more than anything. I really think so. The following night on stage, Elvis brought Lee on the stage before his audience saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my friend, Lee Majors." Then he looked over at me and said over the microphone, "Kathy, you look tired. Did you stay up all night with Lee?" Nightly during performances, he'd make similar remarks like, "Folks, Kathy's voice might not be clear tonight. She's been spending too much time with Lee Majors." This went on for a week. Sounds like a joke to me. Now, that being said, we all have our own interpretations of this, including Kathy. Every night in between shows and afterwards, he'd call me into his dressing room. He just wanted to keep me in there alone with him. When he finally called Lee into his dressing room one night, Lee said, "Man, I've been here for days, and I can hardly get to talk to you because you got that Kathy in your dressing room with you all the time." Elvis replied, "You know what it's like, Lee, making love to Kathy with her high voice and everything." Everybody laughed but me. The next evening in Elvis's dressing room, I asked him, "Why are you doing this? We're not seeing each other now. We're not tied to each other. I'm an adult woman and I can make my own decisions." Elvis grinned. "I'm only looking out for you. I don't want you to get hurt." Then he paused and said, "I'm just a jealous guy. You know how I am." This was his typical attitude towards women he loved and cared about. So, I was right. He was joking, but at the same time, a little serious. I think that he knew Lee Majors had some serious... he had some serious star power. Lee was a great actor. And as Kathy said, a good-looking guy. Elvis, of course, but Kathy was having relationships with other guys that were married, that were, not that matters, but that had long-term relationships with one woman and had learned to please a woman. Not that Elvis couldn't, but I think Elvis, it was more about the experience of being with them, and maybe not being with them very often. It was just a matter of, and maybe I'm tripping over my words here, but I think you understand what I'm saying. If you're in a relationship with somebody long-term, you better learn how to please them in that way, or they'll stray. That's just the truth. And I'm not saying that that's what happened with Priscilla and Elvis at all, but I think that Priscilla would have known who Elvis is, and obviously she said that Elvis pleased her greatly. Just not in the ways that she wanted. And so Kathy here, she's out and about dating this guy, Adam, and then this guy, Doug. And I think that she was, I guess she was ready for that part, that period in her life. And, and I'm saying this not to pass judgment on her. It's just something that we're reading here. Um, and I think Elvis realized that. And I think Elvis didn't want to ever really lose anybody in his life. He had that fear of losing people because he lost his mom. I think it's just, and for those of us that we've been talking about the Are You Lonesome Tonight book with Lucy DeBarbin and Derry Matera, there's a lot of people saying, well, he never would have been with a woman with a child. I don't think any of those rules came up with Elvis, if they did indeed, until after his mother died. So Lucy and Elvis, from all I've read so far, it's just 53, 54, 55. So even though she's a mother, I don't think he had any issues with that back in that day. I think it had to do with his mother passing, if at all. So let's continue this book. I'm sorry. Hopefully I didn't stumble over myself and say something that upset anybody, but just thinking out loud, and I want y'all to think out loud too. I mean, I want to see your comments. I want to see your thoughts on this. As we're reading this book about Kathy, she's putting herself out there in a sense to kind of get, some Elvis fans perhaps even mad at her. She said a few things, basically saying that Elvis wasn't the lover that this guy Adam was, and that he was jealous and possessive here. But he grinned, and I think it was more in a joking way, because, this is Elvis's life on the road. This is his friends, his family, his group of people. And I don't know if he took it as serious as Kathy did, because Kathy was trying to assert her independence, I think. So let's keep going. All right. So the next evening after the show, when I was sitting out in the foyer area of Elvis's dressing room, sipping my usual hot tea with lemon and honey, Lee was again talking to me. Suddenly, Elvis entered the room dressed to kill in black with white trim and stared at me sitting next to Lee, who was leaning against the bar. Elvis just pointed at Red, Sonny, and Dr. Gainham, Elvis's doctor in Las Vegas, and snapped his fingers. In a split second, Red and Sonny were sitting on each arm of my chair, and Dr. Gainham was standing in front of me, pinning me and on front of all sides. Elvis just stood there pointing at me from across the room and proclaimed, "You'll always belong to me, Kathy." He was looking right through me. "You'll understand it further along." I finally had an inexplicable feeling that this was not just a simple jealous statement, because in his eyes I saw the look of prophecy. Did he know something I didn't know? His statement did in fact end up being prophetic, because here I am, even 10 years later, appearing at his fan club birthday celebrations. The heavy atmosphere in the room soon turned back to normal as Elvis and the guys started kidding around. Once again, these are jokes, Kathy. And at the time, I would 100% completely understand that if you thought it was serious. Think about it. You're around the most famous, most important person in a sense in the world. And if he does something, you take it at face value until he laughs. Because Elvis, he had that personality. But from me reading, that's what I read into it. And I'm not trying to defend Elvis. I'm sure Elvis was capable of being jealous and all this other stuff. Everybody is. But in these scenarios, I think it was more that than anything. And maybe he laid it on too thick and it wasn't funny anymore. And that's probably the truth. All right, so the heavy atmosphere in the room soon turned back to normal as Elvis and the guys started kidding around. But I knew that if Lee and I really wanted to go out together, which wasn't the case, Elvis wouldn't have allowed it. There would have been a big battle. A few weeks later, following Lee's visit with Elvis, I heard through a friend of mine the word around Hollywood was that Elvis's girl singer was in and out of his dressing room. He wasn't so pleasant to another boyfriend who came to see me in Las Vegas. This man came from my hometown, a tremendously handsome guy who worked in the construction industry. He was the type of man that made heads turn. Well, we get along very well, and we enjoyed each other's company. Between shows, I met him in the Sweet Inspirations dressing room, and that's where I first introduced him to Elvis. "Elvis, I want you to meet a friend of mine from my hometown." Elvis shook his hand and stared at him and then said, "Kathy's a good delay, isn't she?" Oh, my goodness. Well, we have to, I guess, believe Kathy. We've been believing her all along, right? So, Elvis is capable of saying some mean things, if that's what you believe too. I want to see what your opinion is. Did he say that? Did he say that because he was joking? Did he say that because he was trying to be mean? First time I read that, okay? I'm sitting here reading it as well. My date was speechless and embarrassed. No, first off, we know that he did say on stage that Kathy gives affection to any member of the band or something like that. He was upset one time on stage. So, so we know he's capable of saying some things. So he did have some feelings for Kathy, whatever it was. And maybe let's just keep reading, okay? I want to hear your opinions, but we want to get through this book too, okay? I can't talk forever on every subject. My date was speechless and embarrassed. I was livid with anger. In that one statement, he let my date know that I was his property and that we had had an affair. Just previously, during the show, he had insinuated by looks and attitude that I belonged to him or that we were really involved. He did that quite often, but I had never seen him so insulting and obvious as he was that night. Later, when my date took me to dinner in the hotel coffee shop, the more he thought about what happened, the more upset he became, and he began hyperventilating. Come on, construction guys hyperventilating? What the hell? What's wrong with you, dude? Why would you hyperventilate? That's just, I don't know. Maybe it's hyperbole. Or that's what you'd call it, hyperbole or hyperbole. Just creative writing. I found myself explaining Elvis's actions. I guess I was apologizing and explaining at the same time. He was probably hyperventilating, thinking that Elvis was going to kill him. Probably. He's like, oh, the king of rock and roll. He's going to put his karate on me. So I guess I was apologizing and explaining at the same time. I then had to tell him that Elvis and I had one time been involved, but that by mutual agreement, we had decided to call it quits. I went on to explain that I was as surprised as anyone that Elvis would say something like that. But then again, it was Elvis's kind of dark humor and shouldn't be taken too seriously. It didn't end my relationship with a man from my hometown. In fact, we became more serious and more committed to one another. However, Elvis had almost ruined it, and every time I thought about it, I became angry at his audacity and rude behavior. Even though Elvis did give me problems, he always managed to explain himself away. I became livid and screamed, "What is this? How could you possibly do such a thing? How can you be so rude and embarrass me that way? You're making me hate you. I hate you." His response, with two extended fingers moving rapidly back and forth, like scissors cut in the air, he said with a grin, "Love and hate go together, just like this. You can't hate anybody you don't love, Kathy." Page 197 is where we're stopping today. So let's talk about that. First off, who made it a point to say it wasn't going to work out when it was working out, at least for Elvis and Kathy at the time? It was Kathy. And I don't blame her. She hadn't been in relationships before, and, she was overwhelmed because, she wanted the traditional relationship. And Elvis, being Elvis and what he was used to what he was used to. I mean, there's no blaming for either one of them. I mean, Kathy, everybody wants to have a regular relationship for the most part. But Elvis, I don't think he ever felt he could. I think that he had come from a long line of bouncing around because nothing ever worked out. And I don't know how this Are You Lonesome Tonight's gonna occur, but you had a lot of ex-girlfriends, Barbara Hearn and June Wanico and all this other stuff that he knew they couldn't handle his career. They couldn't handle the secretiveness of it and to be there for the fans and audiences and the marketing part of it, the marketing part of the music, which Colonel Parker was right. Back in those days, if Elvis would have tied himself down, he would have been less famous. Because if he was with somebody serious, but then he was being with all these girls, well, they would have looked at him a little differently, like he was a player instead of just being available. Maybe I'll win his heart. But Elvis just truly loved the music. He loved his fans. And that's who he was. And Kathy wasn't willing to accept it right away. And Elvis was probably hurt. Regardless of being hurt or not. You and I know that you want to be loved by somebody fully and completely. And if you don't, it's really, really difficult. You start like Kathy, she couldn't handle it. So I don't know. Under the context. It feels like there's a lot of joking going on. But at the same time, Elvis may have had a lot more feelings for Kathy than Kathy even realizes. Think about that. And I hope you're still with me. I know there's about 30% of you that stay to the end. But I feel that, like Elvis, he kept her around. Kept her playing on stage with him till the end of his life. And I mean, I think usually if you're really upset with somebody or you don't like somebody anymore, you don't really want them around. You find a way to get rid of them. Elvis didn't. I want to know your thoughts on that. I mean, they certainly shared a spiritual bond, talking about things. I don't know. I don't know whether they continued to be intimate at times. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. She hadn't talked about that too much. But she did say she didn't feel the same thing for that Adam guy. I think it was Adam or Doug or somebody that she felt with Elvis, that wanting to give herself, fully given herself. And there's something there, how she felt about Elvis. So let's listen to some music, just and then leave some comments. If you don't want to listen to music, you can click off here or leave your comment and click off. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming on and having another episode with me of Elvis and Kathy. We got more books to read. We're going to read some more Are You Lonesome Tonight? From Here to the Great Unknown, Lisa's story. My Army Days with Elvis. We're getting close to being done with that one with Johnny Lang. And then I need to have a conversation, maybe a Zoom with him. We are going to have a Zoom with Daria Matera on Friday. And I have had some conversations with Desiree. I don't know whether we're going to actually have a conversation or not. I mean, as in with the channel. She did once again say to thank all the lovely fans out there of her father's, what she said, for your love for him. So, all right. This is Forever's Photos, TCB, TLC.
The shadow of the king still haunts the Memphis night in the dimming southern light. Graceland comes alive. He walks those southern halls, his footsteps fall and fall, until those gates up front swing wide and bring his fans inside. Elvis looks out, smiles down at the crowd, from his window way up high at Graceland, watching time go by, watching over us all, day after day, night after night. Memories like a song keeps the king walking on. He is still amazed. We love him to this day. Elvis looks out, smiles down at the crowd, from his window way up high at Graceland, watching time go by, watching over us all, day after day, night after night. Memories like a song keeps the king walking on. He is still amazed. We love him to this day. Elvis looks out, smiles down at the crowd, from his window way up high at Graceland, watching time go by, watching over us all, day after day, night after night, day after day, night after night. He was born in a shack in Tupelo, a healthy boy, but he lost his baby bro. He grew up poor, the dirt poor life. The only thing he had was a guitar and a bike. That was Elvis, born in 35, that was Elvis. The coolest cat alive, from don't be cruel to all shook up, suspicious minds. summer of '77, Priscilla broke his heart and sent him back to heaven. He sang his songs for all to hear. American trilogy still brings a tear. That was Elvis, born at 35, that was Elvis. The coolest kind of life, and don't be cruel to all shook up, suspicious minds to burn in love. That was Elvis. He left us a gift in Lisa Marie, but now she's singing with Elvis in heaven's jubilee. That was Elvis, born at 35, that was Elvis. The coolest kind of life, and don't be cruel to all shook up, suspicious minds to burn in love. That was Elvis, from that's alright to all shook up, suspicious minds to burn in love. That was Elvis, Elvis, Elvis. That was Elvis, Elvis. That was Elvis, Elvis, Elvis.
Wonderful once again to spend some time with y'all. This is Rare Was Photos, TCB TLC. Hope you have a great day, great evening, great weekend, great morning whenever you watch this video.